Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 154. I cannot believe we made it to 154 episodes without being struck off air, without any letters in the post. And we're still climbing up this ladder. 154. I don't know if it's a mystical number, 154, but I'm pleased to be bringing you episode 154 this week. Do not forget, there are two ways to watch this podcast on YouTube or Facebook. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching this on Facebook, if you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hari Krishna Project Facebook page so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hari Krishna Project and all the other stuff that we do as well. As wonderful as this podcast is, we do other things. We distribute books, we visit schools, we organize Hari Krishna festivals, and it's just dawned on me this morning we are a quarter of the way through this century. 2025 is next year. Bit scary, and so we're keen to increase our activities next year. 2025, can't believe it. Okay, this week's episode, it's another first. We're kind of on a series of record-breaking podcasts. We've actually got two guests for the price of one, which is fantastic. I'm delighted to welcome Ishan Thakur Prabhu and Bhakti Devi Dasi. Hari Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It's great to have you both with us, which is wonderful. Even though I'm particularly interviewing Ishan Thakur, but behind every great man, there's an even greater woman. Is that a really naff expression? They used to say that about the Clintons, but I'm sorry. Okay, so it's particularly really good to have Ishan Thakur with us. We've not met before, but we've just been chatting. We realised that we both have a link with the city of Bath, which is a fantastic, beautiful city in England, which I'm very biased because this is where I live. Okay, so Isham, we're going to start with the first question. It's the first question that every guest gets just to warm us up. Please tell us a little bit about you and where you are from.
Hare Krishna. First of all, let me express my gratitude for inviting us on this show. Yeah, and I would like to take a chance and remind our dear audience that Ukraine is facing a very difficult situation now. It's literally on fire of war, and we'd like to ask everyone to pray for the end of this war and the long-awaited peace here, because every day a lot of civil population, what to say of soldiers, they're dying, and among them there are a lot of devotees who voluntarily went to fight in this war and those who were conscripted. So please let's pray for the fast settlement of this terrible drama, which is actually the second biggest continental war in Europe since Second World War. Yeah. And plus, taking a chance again, we unfortunately had a very sad news about one of our close friends. He left the country in the beginning of the war. His name was Akhilananda Prabhu. Yeah, he was actually, as you can say in English, a best man at our wedding. Yeah, but we call it in Ukrainian tradition, we call it a witness of our wedding, because we had actually two wedding ceremonies with Bhakti. One was a part of a big Hari Krishna festival with the Bodhayan Maharaj, our spiritual master, and due to him we actually met. And the second civil wedding was just for the relatives, and Akhilananda Prabhu, who was my great friend and outstanding devotee and big popularizer of Hare Krishna in Ukraine. Yeah, he was a witness at our wedding. And unfortunately, yesterday we had sad news that he died because of cancer. He was probably around my age. Yeah. So let's pray for this great soul so he would get best chance to get incarnated and serve Krishnas and devotees and keep this connection. Yeah. So talking about where I'm from, yeah. Okay, if you we talk about it from the so-called philosophical existential point of view, Vedic culture, yeah, we all belong to Tathagata Shakti, and we found ourselves in this illusory world, and we're all aspiring to get our connection back to Krishna, and through devotional service and chanting the holy name. And if we're talking about it from a very like material point of view, I was born in Ukraine, which at that time was a part of USSR. Yeah, it was back in 1976. Yeah, so I was born to a middle class family where my father was in a special military service, and my mom was an economist. Yeah, but at that time, actually, he wasn't even a military, he was an aircraft engineer at the time when I was born. So I was raised in Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine. And if you go deep in history, it was a very ancient state of Kievan Rus, where the Slavic civilization was actually born. Yeah. And now it becomes especially prominent in the context of this fight for this land. Yeah. And I finished the school here, and then I entered, at that time it was called an institute, but nowadays it's called Kiev State Linguistic University, and I studied English philology. And afterwards, I worked as an interpreter translator, mainly as a freelance, but mostly I worked for the international adoptions agencies helping Ukrainian orphans to get adopted by by American families. Yeah. In 2018, I met Bhakti Devi at the festival. She just came from London. Yeah, and we had a very short conversation, just a couple of times, and then we got connected on Skype and decided to marry. Yeah, so that's how she came to Kiev just after a couple of months after that. So we have two kids. Yeah, our oldest child is Mirabella, or her spiritual name is Padmavati. Yeah, we called her Mirabella because the whole history of her delivery is miraculous. Yeah, because she was born with her feet down. Yeah, and our second daughter, who is just will turn 2 in the end of March. Yeah, her name is Celestina or Uma. Yeah. So we're trying to raise them in Krishna consciousness. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And just to say, I noticed as soon as we connected today that your English is very good. And now I know why it's very good. So your degree is in English. What was the second one?
Philology. Philology, which is like linguistics. Linguistics, the same kind of synonymous
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
You even sound English, and some of the things that you say, you sometimes have a slight English accent.
Mhm.
We would call it now the King's English rather than the Queen's English. And you were an interpreter. You are an interpreter. So yes, I think your English is even better than mine, possibly. You never know. But thank you for sharing all of that. And I guess Skype has its good re purposes, doesn't it? If you met, you're connected with your wife in that way, that's fantastic. And it's great that your wife also arranged this podcast today. which is the joys of social media. You know, you can connect with so many people in so many positive ways. Um, Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, please now tell us a bit about how you discovered Krishna consciousness. How did you get involved with the Hari Krishna community?
Well, it's a kind of long story because, first of all, I guess it will be quite interesting for your audience to understand the whole like context and background of the country where I was born, which was a part of that Soviet Empire at that time, and naturally, all this like principles of the state were like set up here as well. And we need to keep in mind in the first place that USSR was the first state which was promoting atheism and separation of a church from the state. Why? Because if you go a little bit deeper into the history, we should mention that Orthodox Christianity, if you take a look at it from the like secular perspective, political perspective, was adopted by the outstanding king of Kiev and Rus, great Prince Volodymyr, back in 1988, as an attempt to join a European society, which was called at that time the Christian world. Yeah, and every king was actually treated as a like secular head of the church at that time, which can be compared to probably the situation with the Anglican Church as well. Yeah, and difference to Catholicism where kings were subordinated to Pope. Yeah, and so that was quite a difficult time when, especially in the beginning of USSR era, in the period of so-called like military communism. Yeah, we can say that church was not almost completely banned, but the priests were killed, the churches were destroyed. But on the other hand, closer to the Stalin's period, if we, for instance, take an example of my ancestors' history, like on my paternal side, my ancestor or my great-grandfather, you can say, he became a very outstanding opera singer at that time. He was the second lyrical tenor in the world. Yeah, and somehow or other, he was favored by the regime, by the Stalinist regime. But nevertheless, he continued singing in the church. And actually, he got church singing training when he was a child, because there was a certain tradition in old Ukraine that the monks from a monastery, they would go around the villages and they would collect talented kids for the choir. Yeah, so this is how he got into the St. Michael's Golden Roof Cathedral, where he started his like singing career, and later on he became such a famous singer. And despite the situation I just described, where the religion was almost banned, he could continue performing in the church and even help the artistic people who were actually repressed by the regime. Yeah. And secondly, there was an interesting episode when he had to perform, is somehow connected with the spirit of Christmas Advent now. Yeah. Actually, Ukraine is going to celebrate Christmas along with the rest of the Western world on the 25th. Yeah, now, because before it was 7th of January. Anyway, so he performed Ukrainian Christmas carols in Kremlin, you know, which is like, you know, a symbol of the regime at the time, and still it is. Yeah, and all the records of his performance were destroyed, but he himself didn't suffer. Yeah, and which was a very brave example of promoting Ukrainian culture and religious culture in that kind of atmosphere. Yeah. So, and of course, when Hare Krishna movement appeared in the beginning, it was it didn't go through a lot of trials, but later on, by the times of Andropov, who was head of KGB, yeah, devotees were severely persecuted, and many of them suffered in prisons and psychiatric clinics. Yeah, some of them even died. Yeah. And by the time I came to know about Hare Krishna, it was a transitory period from that era of persecution to a more freedom, but still you should understand that there was a lot of post-Soviet rudimentary symptoms, and the society's acceptance was not as nearly wide as it is now. Yeah, so it was a certain like challenge. Yeah, and
what year was that?
It was in the beginning of the 90s. In the beginning of the 90s, yeah, yeah, and I was lucky enough because I was actually really interested in religion since my conscious childhood. Despite due to my father's job, I couldn't openly do that, and there was still that kind of transitory period. And but nevertheless, I had a great fascination for all that, and somehow or other, there were certain like family relics which were passed from generation to generation, which kind of were of religious nature. Yeah, because my great grandmother, she was a like devoted Catholic. Yeah, and my another grandmother was an Orthodox, and she secretly kind of brought me to the church when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Yeah, and I was always been interested in Oriental like philosophy, and I did some martial arts, as many did at that time. And but I was looking for some kind of complete philosophical system which could give me some kind of explanation, understanding of the world, because I was a teenager at that time. Yeah, and somewhere at that point, I came to know about the devotees, and at first, my parents didn't realize that I was connected to Krishna movement in particular, so they were not so much scared, actually, at the beginning. And plus, luckily enough, it turned out that we live in the actually apartment buildings. Most actually of city residents here, they live in the apartment buildings. And it turned out that just right in the building where we live, there was one apartment where devotees established an ashram, a ladies' Mataji's ashram. Yeah, and it was such a special period of time when devotional mood was extremely up high, and this whole apartment was just filled with the packages of Prabhupada's books, and devotees literally slept on them. So were like distributing books day and time. Yeah.
Day and night.
Yeah.
Day and night.
Yeah, day and night. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
just I may have missed this, but how did you discover this apartment? What was the actual event where you met the Hari Krishna devotees? Did you meet them on the streets or through
yeah,
word of mouth?
on the streets, yeah, on the streets, and there was just a small kind of temple. Yeah, it was a private house, which is kind of a rare thing in Kiev, especially in the downtown area. Most, as I told you, there were like big, more or less big apartment buildings. Yeah, like minimum to 16 stores. Yeah, and this was just a small center. I attended some like regular programs there. Yeah, but as soon as my parents came to know about that, they kind of were trying to ban me from that. And it would even come to the point when they would come to this temple and take me out from there back home. Yeah.
How old were you?
I was a teenager, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old. Yeah. And I ended up hiding all the books. Yeah, I had and all the chanting beads. Yeah. And later on, when I joined the university, I just had a friend who is actually at war now. He was my university group mate. Yeah, and so I just decided the best option will be just to keep all the books and chanting beads at his apartment. And under pretext of doing some homework, I would come to him and do my sadhana at his home. I would chant Hare Krishna. I would read books, sometimes read to him. He kind of enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a very, very interesting time.
Wow. Wow.
He was the only person who came to know that I left for India when I was like 19 years old. Yeah, at some point I decided it would be the best option for me to go to India to travel. Yeah, and stay there for a while.
Wow. Thank you. I just find it quite amazing that there were devotees in that part of the world in the late 80s, early 1990s, in communist USSR. I applaud those devotees. I take my hat off to them for being so brave to go out on the streets, to be so active in their Krishna consciousness, and it's thanks to warriors, I mean spiritual soldiers like that have people like you and others in Eastern Europe have connected with the movement. So I find that quite amazing. The USSR collapsed 1990, which year was it? 1990
1991.
1991. And so did you discover this apartment before 1991?
Yeah, it was after
Wow.
1991.
Amazing.
But still, as I told you before, the mentality was definitely changing, but a lot of the rudimentary, like remnants of that Soviet mind setup were still active,
Yeah.
And there was a kind of like non-acceptance of many things which were like very common in the West at that time. Yeah, and the society's attitude was sometimes pretty aggressive.
I'm going to flip the questions around because you've almost kind of answered this one ish. So your father was a government employee. What was his reaction to you joining the Hare Krishna movement?
Yeah, of course, yeah, his reaction was he was extremely actually disturbed. Yeah, and unfortunately, yeah, I'm also aware that I also didn't have enough knowledge and maturity to represent it to my parents in a proper way. And there was a certain, we can say, radicalism in preaching in that situation, because probably the aggressiveness of the society also inspired devotees to very actively counteract this with the strong preaching. Yeah, and maybe at some point some devotees went to some extremes too. So it was all quite complicated. Yeah.
Thank you. And just finally, before we talk a bit about your situation today in Ukraine, can you just tell us a little bit about what was it like growing up in the Soviet Union? Um, you know, what were your experiences as a child, as a teenager under Soviet rule?
Well, we should actually, it's very difficult to be objective or subjective on the other hand, because first of all, I was just a child, yeah, and that's why, of course, my parents, they just arranged everything for me to grow up and have what most kids would like to have for their like happy childhood, education, like family circle, and I just should say that there were many things which we didn't know till the 1991 or 1985. It was just the beginning of this kind of perestroika, and many things we just came to know now about the like repression of Ukrainian culture, yeah, about the artificial famine which was arranged by the regime in the 30s. So, and especially as again taking into account that I was just a child, I was definitely unaware of all those like evils, because that period seemed to me as a child was more like relaxed, yeah, in the beginning, till the Chernobyl. Yeah, Chernobyl was probably a turning point for the whole USSR system. Yeah, it was a big catastrophe, and actually it affected our family because my father, due to his work, he had to be there in the first hours of it. Yeah, and probably that could cause cancer from which he died many years after.
2005.
Yeah, in 2005. Yeah, but it was also a big psychological drama because we had to escape from Kiev as many other families did. Yeah, and I think from that point the life was different. Yeah, was different for the majority of people. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Okay, so now I'm really keen to talk about, I guess, the main focus of our conversation today. You're living in Kiev, in Ukraine, and uh, everyone is fully aware of what's been happening in Ukraine over almost 3 years now, since
Yeah.
February 2022. Um, can you please tell us a bit about your experiences of living in Ukraine since the Russian invasion, February 2022? And particularly, what has it been like? Because obviously the media, it's on the media a lot, which is quite right. It's important the media tell us in the West what's going on. But I don't really know a lot about the devotee community in Ukraine. How has it affected the devotee community in terms of yourself personally, and also all the things you can no longer do or cannot do? I don't know, such as preaching, book distribution, harinams, you know. So tell us a bit about that over the last 3 years, and particularly the devotee community, what's been happening there.
Well, of course, yeah, on the one hand, to be more exact from the historical point of view, this war started much earlier, back in 2013, with the Revolution of Dignity. But some people would probably say that it was a regional conflict, and some people would say that it was already the beginning of the war. Yeah, but unfortunately, not everyone believed that it will reach such a great upscale as it reached in 2022. Yeah, and we were in Kiev at that time. It was like early in the morning, and the situation was quite hectic and chaotic. Yeah, because you may wake up in the morning and think that you can still escape from it, but it turned out there was no way to escape actually. Yeah, because everything was collapsed. Yeah, and crowds of people were on the streets, and it turned out that the railway tickets were unavailable. We didn't have a car, anything. So we just went to our cottage at first, and thanks to our friend driver from our cottage area, he was brave enough to come over here to Kiev, which many people even wouldn't risk to do, and take us with the family to the cottage. And then, thanks to our great friends, devotees from Western Ukraine, yeah, from Ternopil, we were invited to move there, yeah, which was another kind of good solution, but at the same time risk when you don't know how the situation on the road, yeah, because it was all very, very intensively developing, yeah.
The war.
Yeah, the war, yeah, was very intensively developing, and thanks God, Kiev was not taken over by Russians. It was defended, and the Russian forces were like brought back to the like other like borders, more to the east. And it was a special Krishna's arrangements because these devotees found us an apartment which was next to Iskon Temple in Ternopil. So it was just the next building. Yeah, and I think it was a special mercy. Yeah, because we met the wonderful devotee Vamana Prabhu, who was in charge of the temple, and we met a lot of other refugees from all parts of Ukraine. Some of them were from Kiev, others were from this notoriously known Bucha, yeah, which was like a slaughter. Yeah, it was a terrible place where a lot of people were killed just nearby Kiev. Yeah, and some people came from Kherson. Yeah.
Can I say something? That there was a guy. Well, when we went to Ternopil, it was very stressful. It was a very stressful time in the beginning of the war. We just, in my family is in Canada, and in the days or weeks even leading up to the war, when Biden first got into U.S. office, my family was telling me, Biden and all them are saying that there's going to be some war from Russia, that Russia's right on the border of Ukraine. They have tanks lined up there and stuff. Maybe you should think about going to Western Ukraine or going to the border or something, or being just near there. And I said, oh, no, I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like moving anywhere. We have a kid. At that time, we had only one daughter. I was very tired, and we have the situation also that we have Ishan Prabhu's mother, who is around 80 years old, and she needs a lot of assistance. And so basically wherever we go, we have to bring her with us. So it's quite difficult. So when the war, we went to sleep one night in February. We woke up the next morning at 8 a.m. Turn on your phone. Russia has launched a full-scale invasion into Ukraine. And that's like, oh, okay. Your adrenaline just starts rushing, and everybody's like panicking, scrambling everywhere, like ants, on a hill. And we're like, oh my God, what to do? So we didn't even have a car at that time. And as Ishan said, like this driver from
Valeri.
Valeri, yeah, thank you to Valeri, who
rescued us.
Picked us up in his van, which was very brave at the time because Russia was seriously pushing into this country, like going straight down from Belarus into Kiev. And they had literally tanks here on the streets and everything. Seriously, Russia had it invading us. And people were scared to come to the city. And actually, one of the first nights, we just packed up everything from our apartment here, went over to Ishan Prabhu's mother's, because just beside her house, they have a public school which has a bomb shelter underneath. So everyone was freaked out. And the like concierge in her building called us at 3 a.m. and said, "Oh, there's an air alert, and get up and go to the bomb shelter," because it was in the very beginning of the war. And we went underground, and then about 20 minutes later, this is in the middle of the night, we hear boom, this missile falling into an apartment building just nearby. And we were all like, okay, this is serious. What are we going to do? And so we did go to our cottage outside Kiev. It was a bit more quiet, but it was also terribly scary there because you're hearing on the news all these things about like this Bucha, Irpin cities, which are all just like people living in houses there. So in some sense, it felt more scary to be in a private house rather than an apartment building, because in Bucha, the Russians were coming in, invading, and holding people hostage in their homes and taking over their homes, just living in their homes, looting people's homes for food, all these things that you hear about on the news and stuff. And even some of our good friends who have a pretty big mansion house, even in that Bucha area, they were actually held hostage in their own basements. And this was a house where a lot of Maharajas had come there. They're not exactly devotees, they're more new age people, but they host a lot of programs and do a lot of things for the devotees. And they've had our Gurudev, Bodhayan Maharaj, in their home and everything. And that guy, his brother, and their friend were held hostage in that basement of that house by Russian soldiers while they took over their house upstairs and just left them there to die. And they were drinking water from the radiator.
Yeah.
Trying to take out water from the pipe in the house, heating system or whatever. And then that whole area was surrounded by Russians. They ended up eventually escaping. Anyway, yeah. And then about our story, when we got to Ternopil in Western Ukraine, it was quite difficult because we had a small apartment, and all the apartments for Ukraine are very expensive now in Western Ukraine because everybody's pushed over there. Everybody's going over there. So the price of everything is really high. And it was so stressful. I really didn't know what to think. And I even thought, I want to run away. I want to take my child and run away. And then I was talking to my Gurudev on the phone, Gurudev, this is so difficult. My family and friends abroad are telling me, Bhakti, get out of there. Take your child and get out of there. And then I'm like, well, I can't because my husband can't leave. My husband can't leave because the men have to stay here. And I said, I can't leave. And people then were convincing me, well, please, get out of there, get on a train. And the trains, it was such a chaos in the beginning, like crazy chaos, like you can't imagine. It was a real serious crisis. The trains were just open, no ticket needed. You just go to the station, you get on, and it's like an Indian train. People packed in like sardines. I mean, not really like an Indian train where people are on top and on the sides and everything, but like just imagine this kind of train where people, mostly women and children, or men who are over 60, or men with disability because other men cannot go, where people are just packed in and the train just takes you to Poland. They just had these trains which was like open, no ticket needed, just get the heck out of here. And a few of our friends got on that train. And what has changed in Ukraine since the war is that many of our friends have left. Many of the devotees have left if they've been able to. Many of them have gone abroad. And then we, like, things feel a little bit empty. Yeah. And then you also have the whole situation of, which is that the Maharajas are not coming. The traveling Maharajas, which is a very key thing, like especially in Gaudiya Math, for Gaudiya Math devotees, our Maharajas are not coming. Our Gurudev cannot come for many years already. We had COVID first. They didn't want to come. Now we have a war. They don't want to come. And the devotees here are also hesitant to invite the Maharajas because they feel like we have a responsibility. We shouldn't put them in any danger.
Are people allowed to visit? I mean, would
Yeah.
Bodhayan Maharaj be allowed to visit Ukraine?
Yes, of course, he's allowed. He's allowed. They're allowed, but the devotees here, we also have a situation where we don't have electricity all the time. In the whole country, we have these blackouts every day, and it's already been going on for a few years. In the beginning, a couple of years ago, people felt very depressed about it, very bad about it, but I feel like it's at the point now where people are more used to it, more prepared. So for the past couple of years, it's been like, oh no, we have these blackouts, and the devotees just feel like we don't want to put the Maharajas through this discomfort, or if there's an air alert, we don't want them to be afraid and everything, because I think that devotees, they, how to say, like, some devotees think like, oh, we should be beyond all this material things. Krishna will protect us beyond everything. But then, for example, we saw the example of Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who during COVID pandemic was traveling here and there. And then, I mean, Krishna took him away through this disease of COVID. He had COVID and his material body, perished. So it is, possible for anything to happen, and we don't want to put Maharajas or devotees from abroad in that situation. And also, there are a lot of devotees who have joined the army, men who have joined in the army and who are fighting now, and who have also lost their lives in the army on the front line. And currently, a couple of our devotee friends are there on the front line, and ISKCON also has done a very good job of doing the Food for Life program, especially in the beginning of the war. It was really very strong. They were down in the metros, in the underground, because people were hiding down there. Nowadays, people are used to air alert coming on and hearing a big explosion nearby. It's like, it shakes you a little bit, but previously it used to really, truly shake you up. And ISKCON was down in the metros in Kharkiv, in Kiev, and other big cities, really doing prasad distribution, like huge prasad distribution. And it's like very commendable.
And in terms of other activities, so you have a temple, or you're linked to a temple, are you, in Kiev?
Yes, but like, it's a very recent example from yesterday. We attended ISKCON program in a big town. Actually, it looks like possibly that Kiev temple is the biggest in Europe. Yeah, so it's quite huge. Yeah, it's a really large temple. And we specifically attended because we have two kids, because we have our mission temple too, downtown Kiev, which is run by our god, brother Krishna Prabhu, who's also promoting Ayurveda business in Ukraine. And he's currently actually in India. He's was taking part in the World Health Organization Forum, and now he's taking part in International Ayurvedic Conference along with Nigel Hubbard, who is actually from London, but he currently lives in Austria. Yeah, so anyway, so but we recently started attending ISKCON programs because they have a kids program which is separate. Yeah, and they have enough space for that. And Bhakti Devi is also taking a very active part there. So she translates English Krishna books for kids, yeah, into Ukrainian, and we also do that together, and with the help of another devotee at Prabhu as well. Yeah, and she read those books. Yeah, so it's almost every time the case when somewhere in the middle of the program. They want to warn you, or they just announce there is an alert, and we cannot continue our program in the main hall. We cannot continue kirtan or lecture. So please take precaution and get down to the basement. Yeah, and it's very hectic because it's quite a numerous attendance there. Yeah, it's quite a numerous attendance, and all that crowd has to go down. Yeah, and it's it really affects. And also, just I would like to again taking a chance of talking about the first days of the war, express our gratitude to an English-speaking community of our friends, because as I told you, I was involved with international adoptions. So, and we had a huge moral and even sometimes even financial support from them. And Christopher Holroyd, that friend of mine I told you about in the beginning from Chester, yeah, he's been always been very helpful.
I want to say that, like, in a way, it feels like the devotee community in Ukraine is a little bit dwindling, actually. Even though there are a lot of devotees, you know, if we compare to Western countries, but sometimes you just feel like the temple is a little bit empty, like there's not as many people as there used to be. And there is Rasa Center, which has a Sunday program downtown Kiev, but the life of the like Gaudiya Math devotees is really in sadhu sanga, I feel. And many of the devotees, first of all, many of the devotees are scared to come to the temple. Like the guys, many guys are scared to go out of their home at the moment because there's mobilization going on, conscription going on all over Ukraine, all over Kiev. And it has happened to several of our friends where they have been taken off of the city bus, where they have been taken off the street and taken into a van and taken to the training center, which is basically impossible to escape from. It's a criminal offense. There are many devotees in the military forces now, many who don't necessarily want to be there also. And there are groups online for these guys and their families who to support each other, and for the general public or devotees to support these soldiers.
Yeah,
soldiers.
It's held by Mukunda Prabhu, and also Achyuta Krishna Prabhu is a part of that. Yeah, they're both in active military forces, and they're doing a great job. They are supporting the serving devotees, I mean, the army with everything they need. And on the other hand, I would like to add that despite all that, due to some of our great friends, devotees, like I mentioned, Krishna Sharan Prabhu, he arranged like terrific spiritual festival called Rasa Fest in autumn. And you see that despite all that, a lot of people are more and more inspired to join spiritual seeking groups. Yeah, and plus Veda Life, which is a part of Sri Chaitanya Saraswati mission and our great friend who actually took sannyas recently. Yeah, Rasananda Maharaj.
Rasananda Tirtha Swami.
Yeah, they're doing a great job,
Yeah.
and one of long-time friends of devotees who's taking very active part now is a rock star, famous Ukrainian rock star, Oleg Skripka. Yeah, he attended actually a couple of events we attended. Yeah, he's also part of this program, and a good thing that all the books of Prabhupada there started translating them into Ukrainian, and now with the beginning of the Prabhupada Marathon, they already translated 3 cantos of Bhagavatam into Ukrainian language.
Amazing.
And it gives another kind of perspective of development. So that's why I'm now thinking more and more of translating the books I translated from English into Russian, translating them into Ukrainian, and I'm trying to do some live translation in Ukrainian now.
Yeah, I would say that a lot before this whole war, that a lot, if we talk about Hari Krishna devotees in this area of the world, a lot of it was connected to Russia and Russian language prior to this war. And now that the war has been going on, especially in Ukraine, all the people, plus devotees, are really enthusiastic to promote Ukrainian culture and language and to remove that whole Russian element of things. So the devotees here are being very mindful and translating the books of Prabhupada now from Russian into Ukrainian. Yeah.
I think the fact that you are that the whole of the Ukrainian community is celebrating Christmas Day according to the Western calendar rather than the Eastern calendar is a massive seismic shift in statement, isn't it? So absolutely, I think that was a year ago, wasn't it? The Ukrainian government made the decision to celebrate Christmas Day on a separate day.
Yeah, and there are serious grounds for that because actually there was always been a difficult situation. As you remember, I started our very beginning of the conversation from some kind of historical explanation of the complicated history here. Yeah, and this is the outcome because the Ukrainian, some parts of Ukrainian Orthodox Church was subordinated. I don't know. I hope it's still not subordinated.
No, it's separate now.
To Moscow Patriarchate. Yeah, and just to make it separate. Yeah, they promoted this celebration on the 25th and to show more unity with the Western your European world.
Yeah, even within devotees, like in ISKCON especially, in ISKCON I think more than anything else, there is a like kind of even breakup between Russian ISKCON and the rest of the world ISKCON, because there are some, leaders in ISKCON, especially Russian, who support Russia, really do. And there are many devotees even from, Russia who are really supporting the war and regime. And also the devotees that we know who, look, also what's big in Ukraine is Saraswat Mat, and they do a lot of programs. They're quite active. And this Rasananda Tirtha Maharaj, he actually printed mini Bhagavad Gitas for the soldiers, and he has shipped them out in big quantities to soldiers, not only devotee soldiers, but just to soldiers in general. He did that big service. And every year they put on what's called Veda Life Festival, which it's not like a Ratha Yatra or anything like that.
Is that with Swami Avadut?
Yeah.
Avadut Swami.
Yeah.
I've never met him, but I've been following him on Facebook for years. He's very impressive.
Yeah. He is not around here anymore. I don't know where he is.
He's in Thailand.
He's in Thailand, yeah.
Yeah.
But he, I think he's shifted his focus a little bit. I don't know, but the mission is still going on. Yeah.
I did hear, I can't remember his name. And if I did, I probably wouldn't say his name. But I remember about 2 years ago, there was an ISKCON sannyasi justifying the invasion of Ukraine,
Mm,
which was very bizarre and very irrational. I mean, I,
mm,
like most normal people, are into rational thinking. No country should
yeah.
invade another country. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter about anything.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't justify anything. I can picture him in my head. He's a relatively young and new sannyasi as well.
Mm,
Can I ask a question now about how, if anything, or what, if anything, has the Russian invasion done to your faith or your spiritual practice? Has
mm,
it tested you? Has it challenged you? Has it strengthened you?
Yeah, actually, uh, I guess it made us more focused. And as I told you, when we found ourselves in Ternopil, I kind of felt myself back to the times of my youth where I could attend regularly ISKCON programs, and it was really a rescue from all the chaos of the war,
mm.
of this terror. Yeah, it was really an island of safety and security. Yeah, and I think many other devotees who were welcomed by and hosted by this great,
Vamana Prabhu.
yeah, Vamana Prabhu, they just felt the same. They
Yeah.
just felt the same.
That Ternopil temple it's just like blown away. I'm blown away by this Vamana Prabhu because they have in Ukraine, in many of the smaller towns, there are ISKCON temples, which is like really refreshing to see that there's Krishna temple in even like every town and village really in Ukraine. But basically, with the war going on in Lviv, which is the kind of capital of Western Ukraine, that temple we heard it was so overcrowded with refugees, devotee refugees, and people coming from the more eastern parts of the country, like so overcrowded. One of our friends was there, and he said that the brahmachari ashram was really like packed, like I mean, like sardines, like they're sleeping. Isn't it? How do they say? They're sleeping. If one person rolls over, everyone has to roll over because they're literally like packed. All these guys. I don't even want to think about it, but that it was so overcrowded, Lviv temple, because people were just kind of using it as a starting point to either stay in Western Ukraine or go over to Western country. So this temple in Ternopil, which is just a really little center, they even don't really have money. And it's just like one brahmachari who lives there full time, this Vamana Prabhu, who's like a saint. He's really a saint. He can't he even he's just this very humble Prabhu, like no ego whatsoever. He was hosting all these devotees who were coming through. And there were devotees from really war-torn regions, serious regions in what's in the north that town? Chernigiv.
Yeah.
In Chernigiv, where the Russians had come down from Belarus, some guys were running away from there. Some a couple from Kherson, these Radhanaswami disciples came there, and then also one guy was from Mariupol. I don't know if you've heard about Mariupol, but it's this city has been absolutely destroyed because Russia didn't want it to exist anymore. Like a city which has it's like Hiroshima, something like this.
It was a beautiful, newly rebuilt city on the Azov Sea, I believe. Yes, it was like kind of seaport and a big industrial center, but it was rebuilt into a beautiful city. Yeah.
In my opinion, Mariupol is one of the worst atrocities of this war that we've seen, that we've known about so far, because it wasn't like a small town like Bucha or anything. It's really a city, a real big city like Odessa or something on the water there, just between Crimea and Russia, and they flattened it. They flattened it. All the apartments gone. Everything gone. All structures gone. Keeping women, children, old people, families, whoever, everyone hiding underground, not letting them get out. And who knows how many people died just underground trying to survive. And it's just so disgusting. It's horrible. And how in Russia they have taken orphans or children from there and taken them to Russian country and forced them to live there, or and it's just a lot of they're forcing orphan children also to do propaganda on Russian TV.
Yeah, and also I would like also to mention that my boss from the adoptions, he was a key figure, probably international adoptions in this Eastern European region. He was killed. He was killed. He could easily leave the country, but he was hopeful to help many orphans which would naturally appear and which were still already existing in Ukraine to get adopted and escape. He was killed at the beginning of this war. Yeah, although he was U.S. citizen and he was probably more than 60 years old, so he could easily leave the country.
Anyway, I want to say that in Western Ukraine, anyway, Vamana was saving a lot of people, helping them to move on, and
And just out of interest, this was one of the questions I said to it's a slightly political question. What is the now that Donald Trump's going to become the next president, is there a feeling things might be different, good or bad, over the next 12 months? I don't really understand Donald Trump's. Hello?
You're breaking up a little bit.
Breaking up.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I understand you now. Yeah.
Oh.
Is there a feeling that because the US president is going to change, is there a feeling that things might change, good or bad, over the next 12 months?
I don't know if it's a fair statistics, but they say that Trump has the biggest support in the whole of Europe in Ukraine now, because people are really hopeful he may end up it in some way, but I don't know if we can completely trust politicians, but but actually we have no choice. I mean, we have no choice. We're really hopeful that this war should end as soon as possible. And if it will be arranged in such a way that it will be through Trump, let it be.
Yeah, some devotees are, I know that in the West, some devotees are really into Trump and they think he's like a savior. He's like a God appointed by God. And because he's putting this, a few like Tulasi Gabbard and a few other politicians in his cabinet, that because of this, he's like fulfilling some prophecies and all this kind of mumbo jumbo.
All I will say is that the devotee community is very diverse, which is good, and we don't all agree on everything. And some are more right wing or left wing or conservative or liberal. And actually, we are a microcosm of the real world. You know, we don't agree on everything, which is good. You know, it's and before we go on to the final question about your Guru Maharaj, I just want to say from, I guess, a British perspective that we really admire you. And you know, I whenever I think of the Ukrainian people, I think, wow, they're so brave and incredible, and they're staying and they're tolerating it. And okay, you don't always have a choice, but we admire you. And I think your president is, for some reason, he came up in conversation with someone the other day, and they said, "Oh, Zelensky's such a hero." You know, I mean, I don't even know Zelensky's politics personally, but he's certainly a great statesman for Ukraine around the world. I mean, that's the impression that we get anyway.
Well,
But people have different views. I get that, and we all just want the war to end. I mean, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Let's now spend a bit of time glorifying your Guru Maharaj. I think that this is this is episode. Well, I know it's episode 154, but I think you're the first disciples of Bodhayan Maharaj that I've ever interviewed. I think. Somebody get in touch if you're listening or viewing, and I've made a mistake because I've interviewed so many devotees over the world from so many mats. Because this is an independent podcast, and we're not aligned to any institution, which is great, which means I can speak to who I want to speak to. So let's talk a little bit about your spiritual teacher, Srila Bodhayan Goswami Maharaj. What inspired you both to take shelter of him? And what is it about him that inspires you?
Well,
Well,
firstly, I want to say that Gurudev is the reason that I'm still here today because I, when the war started, my parents, especially because I'm not Ukrainian, I'm Canadian, and my parents were telling me, you know, get out of there and take your kid, like the practical thing that most people thought, we should have done or whatever. But I was like thinking, okay, should I listen to the people in the world or should I listen to Gurudev? And I was very stressed with the whole situation. And also, it's not easy living with your mother-in-law, especially we went to Western Ukraine living in a small little apartment with my mother-in-law. Not easy at all. I almost just died from that. But I called Gurudev several times, Gurudev, what should I do? I wanted him to give me the answer that I wanted to hear, oh, yes, Bhakti, take your child and go somewhere else and leave Ishan and his mom here. But Gurudev said, no, if it were me, don't leave your family. Don't abandon your husband. Don't abandon your family. And at this point, it was the hardest thing to do. Every fiber of my being wanted to just leave, wanted to run away and take my daughter. And I didn't. I stayed in one place, even though all my energy, mentally, and everything was far away, trying to run away. I stayed physically here in one place, and what's resulted is um, the family actually becoming a lot happier. And then we ended up having a second baby, which is just like a great light on our life, even just like embellishing everything way more. And in the end, I'm happy I listened to Gurudev. That's a message for everyone. Listen to your guru, even if you think it's the wrong thing, even if all the people in the material world are telling you do the opposite, you have to follow, Sri Guru. Yeah.
And just out of interest, Bhakti Devi, are your parents Hare Krishna devotees?
Oh,
Okay.
mm-mm,
So they might
no.
not have understood things from that kind of cultural, spiritual point of
Well,
view.
I will say that I came over here. Look, I first met my god brothers and god sisters from this part of the world, Eastern Europe, in India. And then we, got in touch on Facebook. I became into all their Facebook groups and everything. And then they invited me come to the Odessa festival with Gurudev. And I said, okay, I should come. It sounds awesome. Gurudev is there. There's a lot of devotees there. I came. It was just wonderful, like a totally transcendental festival, transcendental world. And um, I had seen I had seen him before on YouTube videos, on Facebook. I was his friend already, I think. And let's be honest, it's not that easy always to find a husband or wife as a devotee. It's really not because it's it's a small fraction of the society at large, first of all. And then you've got all these other things like nuances in order, which is like the couple can be initiated by different gurus, and then it's like there can be that conflict in the marriage, and then it's like you there are a lot of international marriages among devotees, where a lot of like I have a couple of friends, girlfriends who went to India, married Indian guys, um, and thought it would be the best thing for them. And then a couple of years later, get divorced because of conflicts and get divorced when there's children involved. And it's difficult, it's difficult to find a spouse I mean, it's a whole topic for another podcast conversation, but it's really difficult to find a spouse. And when I was in Canada, when I was, younger in my early 20s, I was like, okay, what should I do for the rest of my life? Just sit around chanting japa, and like what real prospects of future? Because we also have the mentality like in Krishna consciousness where we want to feel like we're doing something for Krishna. We want to feel like we're serving our real purpose that we should be in Bhakti. So we have this ashram system, brahmachari or brahmacharini going into grihasta and then whatever's after that. But it's like, okay, I don't live in the temple. I mean, I did live in the temple a little bit first in France, a little bit in India, but not really like a full-time temple devotee. So I tried to, find a husband because it's like, okay, what am I going to do with my life, and so it just was difficult because especially for women, what I felt like was, okay, if I get married to my husband, I want to be a good wife. I have to really feel that my husband is like, someone that I admire, that I trust completely, who can be like a guru to me in a certain kind of way. But then the problem came up like, okay, if I have a husband who is not following my Gurudev, then what happens? I'm changing guru. I have to follow a different guru. My husband's, spiritual master in his lineage, because we have this problem in Hari Krishna society where we have all these different gurus, all these different teachers who sometimes their philosophies, even in small nuances, can conflict with each other. So if a guy is a really good devotee, really wants to follow his Gurudev, and his Gurudev says, oh, we believe in fall of the jiva, or, we don't, or whatever. So it's like, okay, the woman, let's be honest, there's a lot of misogyny in Hare Krishna society. There's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of guys being like, I'm the topmost. If I have a wife, she has to bow down to me, wash my feet every day, and just, cook me prasadam and blah, blah, blah. It's like a lot of that. And it's like, okay, us girls talk to each other and we're like, okay, and we think about it like, okay, I need to do something with my life. I feel maybe it's important for me to have children one day. I feel it's important for me to establish a proper home for myself. But how am I going to do that? Big question. Anyway, I had a couple guys like this one who was a Ritvik, another who was a Narayan Maharaj follower. It was like we're talking for a long time, and then it comes up like, okay, if you can't follow me, then like completely, you care about your Gurudev. You want to be with your Gurudev and you love your Gurudev. And then, yes, I do love my Gurudev because he's Gurudev. Because I have to love I mean every person who is initiated by their guru feels that their guru is right, isn't it? So you want to have faith in guru. That's a big thing for us. We want to feel connected to our lineage through our Gurudev. We offer our prasadam to our Gurudev on the picture, and then whatever, And so I was like, if I get married, I can only marry my godbrother. That's it. And I thought, I don't want the big cultural conflict of being with one of my Indian godbrothers also. because I thought it's gonna be cultural conflict. I know it will be. I've seen it again and again and again. And I thought, okay, I also, I just felt like I should come to Ukraine and see what's going on here. But before, when I was in London at the time that I got invited to come to Odessa Festival. And I talked to one psychic, actually, one devotee who's a psychic, and he said, very soon you're going to meet a guy who is older than you, and he's going to help you and push you forward, especially in your career, in your work life and everything. And so what happened was that December, it was the end of the year. It was 2017. It was a festival that took place over New Year in Odessa, and it was Gurudev's festival. I came, and believe it or not, that festival took place in an area which is normally a wedding hall. So there's a superstition in Ukraine. I don't know where else, but in Ukraine, the superstition is however you spend your New Year is how you're going to spend your year. So from that festival, 5 months later in May, 3 couples got married in the same fire yagya at the same place in Odessa. So we met in that festival and got married 5 months later.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just really, I honestly was not sure about it at all. I could even say I wasn't feeling good also because of a close friend of mine just passed away. It was really difficult. It was a transitory period. You wouldn't believe it that I was kind of like brahmacharini before. I was living with one older Prabhupada disciple, Mataji in white in Canada for a few years. And she was really like my kind of ashram leader, and she taught me a lot. She's a devotee. She was a devotee since she was 15, and she unfortunately passed away in 2018, like literally around my wedding day. And believe it or not, if you know anything about Vedic astrology, this was the actually changing of my planetary periods. So it literally happened that I entered Venus period, like within the weeks that I got married. If you know anything. Yeah. That's like, I think prior to Venus period, I was in my K2 period. So if you know anything about K2, it's like renounced ashram, and then switched over to Venus. That Mataji actually passed away, and then I got a husband like within these weeks. So it was at May, we got married and a fire yagya with our Gurudev. It was Narasimha Chaturdasi. And then that Mataji of mine actually passed away the next week. And then 1 week after that, we had our marriage in the government here.
Same day as finally, it's same day as Prince Harry marriage to Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
Wow.
We kind of,
typically planned.
Yeah.
But we got so-called congratulations from, I don't know if it's real or fake, but that
we got a scroll. We have a scroll that says congratulations from the House of Windsor on your marriage.
Yeah.
Really?
Meghan, yeah.
That's amazing.
I kind of joke that he's like Harry because he comes from kind of well-to-do Ukrainian family, and then there's me, Meghan Markle, who is like from Canada, from America. And
is Meghan Markle Canadian?
No, but she lives in Toronto for a while.
North American. I can't tell personally. I can't tell the difference between a Canadian and an American accent. I mean, is there a difference?
Yeah, I think slightly. I can tell it more now that I'm out of there, but we talk about Gurudev now. We have to talk about Gurudev.
Can I ask Ishan a question before we come back to you? So you're obviously a disciple of Bodhayan Maharaj, and you have been for some time. How did that connection happen? Because I'm assuming that the temple that you encountered 30 years ago was an ISKCON temple, not a Bodhayan Maharaj temple. So when did that kind of transition to Bodhayan Maharaj happen?
Well, it's another long story. I just wanted just to add a couple of words to just not to
Sure,
forget
sure.
what just Bhakti outlined that it's another side of the war that many families and many couples split it. Yeah, due to all these obvious reasons. That, for example, women could leave along with the kids and men had to stay, or men were conscripted. Yeah, and we're really extremely grateful to Gurudev and all the devotees community for their support. Yeah, and yeah, talking about how I met our Gurudev. It was back in 1996. Yeah, I kind of slightly started the story.
You have to tell the story about how you first tried to run away from home to another temple in Ukraine,
right.
and then ran away from home to India.
Yeah. Just due to my kind of difficult situation, I had to admit I made a few attempts due to my like teenage maximalism. Yeah, and kind of fanatism in a way, radicalism. Yeah, I tried to escape to one small temple in provincial Ukraine, which is like 200 kilometers away. But the next day, I was brought back by the at that time leader of ISKCON, the President Temple, back to my parents. So, and my next attempt ended up in reaching over to India. And it was a really extraordinary experience because at that time, literally very few people who traveled to India, it was treated as something super exotic. Yeah, and
What
there
year?
were it was 1996. Yeah, and there were no even direct flights there. Yeah, and you had to go all the way by train. Through all the Middle Asia, like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and I ended up
Wow.
reaching Kyrgyzstan and through Moscow also. Yeah, and I literally had almost extremely small amount of money for this adventure. I was not even sure if I could manage all that. Yeah, and I took that train ticket and then
How did you get the train ticket?
I bought it. Actually, and I went to Kyrgyzstan and I stayed in the capital of Kyrgyzstan. There was a small ISKCON temple, and I spent like almost nearly a month there. And and it was kind of there were some difficulties for some reason with obtaining my visa. I don't know why. Maybe the devotees just wanted to keep me there. Yeah, and I was pretty much ready just to stay there in the small Kyrgyzstan temple community. And I was even taking part of almost every. It was amazing. Almost every Sunday they would prepare some theatrical drama displaying some based on some like Vedic scriptures, and I was a part of that. And just I still remember when I was just I was given a role of actually Lakshmi. Yeah, and I was just thinking, okay, it's very challenging to kind of play that. And then I got the news that finally they arranged my visa and I could travel to India. Yeah, and that was my first like foreign trip in my life. Yeah, and I was just 19. Yeah,
And you have to tell that your parents didn't know where you were.
Yeah, my parents, yeah, they didn't know where I was. Yeah, so that my university mate was the only person who knew, along with his parents probably, where I was. Yeah, and I came to New Delhi, and I still remember I had a big kind of dilemma in my head where to travel first, whether to Brindavan or to Mayapur. But naturally, because I was closer to Brindavan, I just decided. So basically, I just had one-way ticket to travel to India, and I was actually totally penniless. Yeah, and I reached over Brindavan, and happily I met a devotee from Kiev sanga, and he arranged my overnight stay, and then next day he brought me to Prabhupada Vani Ashram, which was run by Prithu Maharaj and Srimati Ramburu, Prabhupada disciples. And actually, Srimati Ramburu, he traveled before to Ukraine. Yeah, and I think actually their mission was to kind of soften that radical mood of preaching, which was very kind of a little bit fanatical, to a more like proper mode of moderateness, so to say.
How old were you?
I was 19. Yeah, I was 19. Yeah, and I stayed for maybe a couple of weeks there. Yeah, and by the way, this place was also a hospice, and just 2 weeks before my arrival, George Harrison was hosted in that very place. Yeah, but we didn't meet. Yeah, and then afterwards, I met a devotee whom I also knew previously from ISKCON, and he actually arranged my accommodation in Krishna Balaram temple, and he asked me to translate Shiva Shidhar Maharaj books from English. Yeah, and it seems to me that almost within maximum, even less maybe than 2 months, I didn't do it in typing. I did it on record player. I translated the majority of, was more than a dozen of books of Shiva Shidhar Maharaj, and then this translation, they kind of vanished, and just it was many years after that I heard from some devotees who somehow or other found those records and could listen, and they kind of said, oh, it sounds like a good translation. And then it turned out that one devotee from Lviv, which Bhakti just mentioned, is like Western capital of Western Ukraine, sort of. Yeah, he told me that he has those tapes. It was recorded on the tapes at that time. Yeah, and so and it was a long time waiting till he could bring them over to one of the festivals of Gurudev. Yeah, and finally, it was actually the same festival when the book written by our Param Gurudev Puri Maharaj, The Heart of Krishna, or Vaishnava Vrat, which I translated into, was published. At the same time, I got those tapes, which I didn't see for I don't know how many years. It was probably somewhere around 2014, it seems to me. It was the time of Revolution of Dignity. So more than 18 after 18 years, yeah, I got those tapes. Yeah, and I was brought up to actually my initial inspiration was to take initiation from Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, a Param Gurudev and a spiritual master of Srila Bodhayan Maharaj, yeah, who was at that time around 100 years old. Yeah, and but I kind of felt that it was kind of difficult for me due to the fact that it was difficult to approach him directly because he was in a very advanced stage of age, and I was kind of very dependent in my situation. Yeah, and he was so there was a kind of, let's put it this way, group of devotees who kind of protected him from any like direct contact with other devotees. Yeah, but at the same time, I saw Bodhayan Maharaj, yeah, and although we didn't speak much, I was really somehow impressed with his like outer charisma. Yeah, and only later on in 2000, yeah, he came to Ukraine, and I was really impressed by his accessibility and availability to the devotees. He
Mm.
would never actually he would never has he was never hesitant to share himself completely with the devotees, and due to the fact that I was his personal translator and savak during all this year starting from 2000, I could see how he wholeheartedly dedicated himself to the service of the devotees. Yeah, he would be ready to answer the questions like through day and night. Yeah, and
Just out of interest, Ishan, did you ever meet Puri Maharaj?
yeah, yeah. In 1996, only once I got only one darshan. Yeah, it was an after Gaura Arati,
Hmm.
like regular attendance, that the devotees, after finishing Gaura Arati, they would come to pay obeisances to him. Yeah.
So how did you end up in Gopinath Gaudiya
In 2000,
Mayapur?
uh,
In Mayapur, when you were first in Mayapur,
uh,
that first trip when you ran away from home.
yeah, it was actually, I met Ujvala Prabhu. Yeah, and
So Ujvala is a quite famous painter in the among the Hare Krishna devotees, and the paintings in Krishna Balaram temple, the big ones, are done by him. And
Hmm.
he's a Ukrainian devotee. And yeah.
yeah, he's Ukrainian devotee, and he was actually brought up first to Sweden to BBT publications by at that time Jadurani, yeah, now Shamarani. Yeah, and actually she's been here too, actually, in this apartment.
Wow.
Before I came to know Bhakti, she was along with her friends who accompanied Shamarani in her trip to Ukraine. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
this apartment where we're sitting has had a lot of Maharaj.
You should have a list of famous Vaishnavas on the wall, like who was here, you know. And I seriously, it's like an amazing, it's like a holy dharma, isn't it? All these sannyasis and sannyasinis and gurus and teachers. It's amazing.
yeah, and then we traveled to Mayapur. Yeah, so
Mm.
and there we actually stayed in Navadvip, but we didn't stay in the temple itself. We stayed in one rented house where most of the devotees from Ukraine stayed. Yeah.
I what's the right expression to use? Question marks were forming in my head when you said that you went to India in 1996
Yeah.
and you were talking about the Gopinath Gaudiya Mat in that broad sense. And I was thinking, well, I'm sure that Puri Maharaj didn't leave the planet till 1999, you know. So I was kind of intrigued. And you answered my question that you did meet, even though briefly you met Puri Maharaj. Um, Actually, when I went to a Bodhayan Maharaj program in the UK in 2019, and this man came in at the back. It was in Brighton, which is there's so many different Hare Krishna devotees in Brighton, and this man came in at the back who was a white English man, maybe in his 60s, and someone said, "Oh, that man's a disciple of Puri Maharaj." And I had a brief chat with him after, but to my knowledge, he's the only ever disciple of Puri Maharaj other than Bodhayan Maharaj that I've ever met. So maybe he's the only one living in the UK. I don't know. There can't be that many of them in the Western world, I would imagine, disciples of Puri Maharaj. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
there are a few. So when I was in London, I met maybe it's the same Prabhu that you know, but he has his own kind of house outside of London, and he's I don't know, brown eyes guy, brown Hair?
Maybe
I
it's
don't know.
him. Yeah, it was 5 years ago. I can't completely remember what he looks like, but I've just remembered that I met somebody.
Yeah.
Um,
What's his name?
can't remember. It's terrible.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, obviously, I'm a young lady. I wasn't too close with him, also. But
Yeah.
um, in what is it called? Dutch, Netherlands. There is Madhav Prabhu, and in from North America there is a few others. Anuradha, who is actually part of our God family, is Mandela Publications. If you know Mandela Publications,
I actually have a
Anuradha,
book somewhere on my bookshelf that I'm sure is Mandela Publications.
yeah.
Um, but I can't remember. I'm sure it's not a Bodhayan Maharaj book or a Puri Maharaj book. Have other
Well,
sannyasis also published under that name as well? Under
there
that,
are a lot.
There are a lot of,
They,
like Bhakti
well,
Bhakti Goswami Maharaj.
that's it,
yeah,
Many.
Bhakti Bellabhirtirtha
yeah.
Maharaj. I might just have one right here, right next to me.
Yeah,
But
but I mean, they publish all sorts of things. They publish like Harry Potter and all that. They have a huge publishing. No, they
okay.
have a huge publishing operation. They really do. It's Ram Dass. Um, it's a family. This family, Ram Dass, his brother Govardhan, who is married to Anuradha, who is the Puri Maharaj disciple, who when she was younger, she's now, I don't know how old, in her 50s maybe. She was living in the Mott in Gopinath Gaudiya Mott in Mayapur, and she is French Canadian. And they're actually Francophone, this whole family. They're Francophone Americans, like US citizens, but they have this publishing operation, and they have now, they've built in California Mandala Springs, which is kind of like a retreat center. And then they have in Hawaii, they also have a temple or mission or center. And now they have bought in the south of France, they've bought a hotel, which they're turning into another kind of retreat center. So we have this connection with this Mandala Publishing with our Gurudev. And other disciples of Puri Maharaj, I'm sure they are around. Yeah.
Thank
But
you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm conscious of the time. We've been recording for quite a while. We've been
mm,
chatting for about 2 hours. We didn't
mm,
we didn't recording for at least an hour 45, I think.
mm,
The other thing that I want to say that stood out for me was that you've mentioned several times in this conversation that you called your guru Dave. You just called
mm,
him. And
mhm,
and I've heard other devotees say, "Oh, I've just called my guru Dave."
mm,
And I've always, I guess I've quite admired that very informal or relationship. I like the idea of it. Just being able to call your guru Dave. I mean, in ISKCON, some of the gurus are so big, um, you can't call them. And if you email them, they don't pick up their own emails. They have
mm,
secretaries and people, and
yeah.
I've never been I've never warmed to that idea. You know,
Mhm,
having a guru is like having a mother or a father. You should have a close, intimate relationship with them. It's not
mhm,
like a manager of a business with 200 employees where you never talk to
mm,
them. It shouldn't be like that.
mm,
So I love the fact you can just call Guru Dave. I'm quite
mm.
envious, actually, if I'm honest. Um, maybe I should call him too. I don't know.
Well, it's
Um,
actually quite surprising to me when I hear devotees who say that. Um, I mean, yeah, in Ukraine there are a lot of like Naranjan Swami disciples, Indra Yamuna Swami disciples, and other gurus like you Russian speaking or whoever. But I just like I became a devotee and I was sort of in ISKCON a little bit in Vancouver in Canada, but I actually ended I met the devotees on the street. It was actually a Russian brahmachari who was distributing books there in Vancouver and gave me the card to come to the temple, chant this mantra, come to the Sunday feast, your life will be sublime, whatever. But yeah, he gave me the book. I thought he was a Buddhist monk, and I was just really interested to hear what he had to say about, understanding of reality. And he gave me this book. I thought, who's on that book? I don't know anything about this. Some blue guy. It was Beyond Birth and Death. that book. And I said, okay, well, thank you. And then he, put out his hand like this. And I'm like, okay, I just, kind of gave him a high five. Like, what do you, what do you want? Like, he's like, donation. And I'm like, oh, I don't have anything on me. I reached deep into my pockets. A couple of coins came out. I was like, okay, sorry, I have 50 cents, that's it. But he looked pretty, pissed off when I didn't give him a donation. But I came to the temple in Vancouver and it was kind of like empty, like there was no one around and nobody explained anything to me. But when I came there, and even when I chanted that mantra on that card, I felt so much better. As a young person, I had all these weights on me, all this mental afflictions and stuff. And I just chanted that mantra and I felt like, whoa, all these all this heaviness is going. And I came to the kirtan at the temple one or two times, or it was the end of Kartik, and I came and I like entered the temple, and I just felt everything, all this weight come off me. And that I decided it's the only place I felt good in my life. The first time in my life, the only place I felt good, where I felt like all this heaviness was coming off me just chanting. And no one even explained to me. I was a devotee for 4 or 5 months before anyone explained anything to me that you have to chant this mantra. I was like, what do you mean? I went to some kind of like Namahata home program where there were all these like ISKCON devotees, and one brahmachari was there saying like about japa. It was the first time I saw japa, like within like after 6 months or so of being a devotee. I was like, oh, you mean we should chant on beads like that? Like no one was there explaining anything to me. No one took me under their wing and really did any of that. But during that time when I was first going to the temple, that's when on the street I actually met Gaudiya Math devotees, Narayan Maharaj disciples, who were also distributing their own small books, and I learned the most just going in their sanga. They had just a couple of programs like for big holidays or when some preacher was coming, and I went to their home programs and I learned like 10 times more in one home program than just simply walking into ISKCON temple where I didn't know anything. I thought it's just like a place to go where I felt better, but nobody explained anything to me about the philosophy. And even I wasn't very proficient in reading books as well. I have to commend Krishna or Prabhupada or my experience in being a devotee for really getting me into reading, because prior to that in my life, like we have such a downfall of literacy in maybe in North America only, I don't know in the UK, but young people, I think they just don't read these days. Like, and I was always one of those. I did well in school, but I never read for pleasure or anything. So when I first started reading Krishna books, it was difficult for me, to really get the information, pick it up and everything. But yeah, with the Narayan Maharaj Sangha devotees, they a few young friends, girlfriend of mine, she, was talking to me, about Krishna and stuff. And that's really where I started to become a devotee and understand everything and really get the taste for chanting everything. And from that was already at the point in time when Srila Narayan Maharaj had already left this world. And then a couple of devotees told me in confidence, they told me, don't take initiation here in our Sangha. It's a mess right now. Gurudev has left and there's this schism going on. These devotees are making all their other camps. They're infighting with each other and everyone's like feeling pretty lost or depressed. And so one devotee said to me, lately I've been taking shelter of Srila Bodhayan Maharaj, and I would recommend you to take shelter of him. And I said, well, I don't know. I'm a new person and I don't know what to do. But I really trusted this devotee's like judgment. And so I said, if you think so, maybe I should just trust the universe or Krishna or whoever that this is coming along my path and take initiation. So I ended up taking initiation. I was 18 years old and I then decided, okay, I want to follow Gurudev. I ended up moving to Montreal where I met this older Mataji who was Prabhupada disciple who kind of took me under her wing for several years. Yeah, but it's great. It's funny how Krishna works in mysterious ways, and that's all.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you both for sharing your stories. What I've particularly liked about this podcast today is that I initially thought I was just interviewing Ishan, but actually all three of us have had a really good conversation,
Mm,
and I've really loved how Bhakti you've been here as well, and we've had some wonderful conversations. And you're a great team, by the way. You're a fantastic team, and which is great. Even the butterfly on the wall behind you is part of the part of the team as well.
yeah.
Um, okay, I'm conscious of the time. We've been chatting
Hmm.
for quite a long time,
Mm,
so I think I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers at home,
hmm.
and then if you just stay in the Zoom room for a
Okay.
moment, and then we'll
Okay.
have a very brief debrief after.
Hmm.
So a huge thank you to Ishan Thakur Prabhu and Bhakti Devi Dasi for being our joint 154th guests on the Hari Krishna Project podcast. I'm very grateful to them for giving up their time. And I have found their story particularly inspiring, living in Ukraine. And I'm certainly in admiration of them and other devotees and all people living in Ukraine, really. So I'm very grateful to them for joining us this week. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Every time I say that, the number of subscribers does go up. So it means that you are listening, which is great. And if you watch this on Facebook, a lot of you do. If you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hari Krishna Project Facebook page. That's the other way you can watch this podcast and keep updated about what we're doing. And also, don't forget, if you want to be a guest on a future edition of the podcast, please do get in touch. You can get in touch via our website or our email address, which is with this podcast. Okay, so until next week, I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hari Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.